Tonight we reflect. You're lying in bed. The room is dark. The day is over, yet your thoughts refuse to rest. You replay a conversation you wish had gone differently. You calculate bills, deadlines, emails. You imagine futures that may never happen. The clock ticks on, but your mind keeps sprinting. You worry, as if worry itself could change the night. Welcome back to Still Within, where we explore calm wisdom in a noisy world. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher from ancient Rome, would have recognized this exact moment. He knew the endless carousel of nighttime fears, the kind that feel sharper in silence than they ever did in daylight. He wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And if you've ever stared at the ceiling at 2 a.m., you know exactly what he meant. For Seneca, night was both a test and a teacher. A test because the quiet hours magnified his own doubts. A teacher because he realized how many of those doubts had no substance at all. The empire might have been asleep, but the mind was busy inventing disasters. And doesn't that sound familiar? Imagine it. Nearly 2,000 years ago, Seneca pacing the marble floors of his villa, candlelight flickering against the walls, trying to settle a mind caught in loops of what if. Different century, same sleepless struggle. Rome had no buzzing smartphones, no emails left unanswered, no 24-hour news cycle. But it did have human beings, people like us lying awake at night haunted by the same restless worries. And maybe that's why his words still reach across centuries. Because they're not lofty philosophy written for scholars in libraries. They're human notes from someone who knew what it was like to wrestle with shadows after midnight. The Romans saw Seneca as a man of contradictions, a philosopher of simplicity who lived surrounded by wealth, a moralist who navigated corrupt politics, an advisor to emperors who often acted against his own teachings. Historians still argue whether he truly embodied Stoicism, or if he merely borrowed its language while serving his own survival. Yet even if his life was imperfect, his reflections cut to the heart of something universal: our habit of turning nights into battlegrounds against ourselves. And here's the irony. The nights you lose to worry aren't truly lost. They can be reframed, as Seneca did, into reminders of what we can and cannot control. He would argue that if you suffer needlessly in imagination, it's because you've forgotten that boundary. Worry tries to expand your responsibility to the size of the universe. Stoicism shrinks it back down to what is truly yours. So tonight, as we enter Seneca's world, think of this not as a lecture from an ancient philosopher, but as a conversation across time. One restless mind speaking to another. One voice reminding you that the thoughts keeping you awake are not new and they're not unbeatable. Take a slow breath. Settle deeper into the present moment. And let's walk with Seneca into the quiet corridors of the night, where wisdom waits in the silence between our fears. The truth is, lying awake at night is not a modern disease. It's a human one. 2,000 years ago, Rome was noisy, brutal, and unpredictable. For Seneca, the dangers that waited beyond the walls of his villa were real. Political intrigue, betrayal, sudden loss of fortune, even the looming threat of exile or forced suicide. To live close to power in Rome was to live close to danger. But what fascinates us today is not just the scale of those risks, but the eerie familiarity of them. Because the forms may have changed, yet the feelings remain the same. You worry about losing your job. Seneca worried about losing his position in the emperor's court. You worry about reputation online. Seneca worried about public disgrace in the forum, where opinion could destroy a life. You worry about bills and mortgages. He worried about confiscations, debts, and the collapse of estates. Different costumes, same play. Seneca noticed this irony often. Humans, he wrote, waste their peace of mind fearing events that may never arrive. And when they do arrive, they rarely strike with the force we had imagined. What was true in the marble corridors of Rome is just as true under the fluorescent lights of an American office at midnight. The enemy is not the world, it's our imagination magnifying the world. Historians still argue about how sincere Seneca was. Was he a Stoic only on paper while enjoying his wealth and political connections? Or was he a flawed man who, precisely because of his flaws, knew the cost of worry better than anyone? Perhaps this debate is what makes him so relatable. A man caught between wisdom and weakness like the rest of us, trying to live out principles that often feel too heavy in practice. Consider your own nights. How many of your worries at 1 a.m. are about events that never arrive? The argument you rehearse in your head never happens. The crisis you fear at work resolves with a simple email. The health scare turns out to be nothing more than fatigue. Seneca might smile at this and say, "See, you carried a burden that was never yours to lift." And yet we keep doing it. The modern world, with its headlines, alerts, and infinite scrolls, magnifies this ancient problem. Rome had its rumors in the marketplace. You have breaking news on your phone. Rome had political conspiracies. You have algorithm-driven outrage. Rome had restless minds pacing by candlelight. You have restless minds lit by the glow of a midnight screen. And so, the bridge is built. From the marble streets of Rome to the quiet suburbs of America, the worry is the same. Seneca's night looks like your night. His restlessness mirrors your own, which is why his words remain not just interesting but urgent. They remind us that worry is not evidence of danger, only evidence of being human. There's something about night that changes the scale of things. A small worry in daylight, barely a pebble in your shoe, grows monstrous after midnight. Seneca observed this centuries ago, and you feel it still. The silence that was meant to soothe you becomes an echo chamber for every fear. You lie there, staring at the ceiling, and suddenly the future is a series of disasters. Bills, deadlines, medical results, conversations you haven't had yet, all waiting to ambush you. The world outside is still, but inside it's chaos. Seneca knew this pattern well. He wrote that the human mind has a habit of conjuring misfortunes. At night, with no distractions, that conjuring becomes theater. The imagination, like a poor actor, exaggerates every gesture, raises its voice, and makes comedy into tragedy. He might have laughed at how predictable we are. We take shadows and convince ourselves they are storms. Modern psychology would agree. At night, your body's defenses are lower. Fatigue clouds your judgment. Stress hormones linger, and without external stimuli to balance perspective, your mind defaults to worst-case scenarios. It's not that the problems grow in size, it's that your capacity to measure them shrinks. And here's the irony Seneca might have enjoyed. The very moment designed for rest becomes the stage for restless thought. The bed is not an enemy, yet in our minds it becomes one. We transform a sanctuary into a battlefield. Think of the last time you woke at 2 a.m. with your chest tight. The thing you feared. Was it ever as bad in daylight as it felt in darkness? Rarely. But the mind doesn't care for proportion at that hour. It only cares for drama. Historians point out that Roman nights were noisier than we imagine. Street vendors, carts, soldiers, even the occasional riot. Seneca, living in the heart of Rome, would not have had absolute silence. Yet the noise he described was not just external. It was internal. And here lies the timeless truth. The worst racket is the one inside your own skull. There's also a Stoic paradox at play. The darker the night, the more visible the stars. And perhaps the darker our thoughts, the more chance we have to notice them, study them, and strip them of their power. Seneca would tell you, don't curse the night for exposing your fears, thank it. For only when you see them clearly can you test whether they are real or imagined. And so, when the world sleeps and your mind does not, you stand in a long line of restless thinkers. From Roman senators pacing their courtyards to modern workers scrolling their phones, the habit is unchanged. The stage may be updated, but the play is the same. The night amplifies fear because it strips away distraction. But in that stripping away lies the hidden gift, the chance to confront yourself without escape. So, what do you do when the night grows loud inside your head? Seneca had a prescription, not of herbs or potions, but of philosophy. To him, philosophy wasn't an academic exercise. It was medicine for the soul. And like any medicine, you had to take it regularly, not just when the symptoms flared, he wrote. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. That line, simple as it is, can act like aspirin for a throbbing mind. You whisper it to yourself when worries multiply in the dark. Most of the monsters you fear? They're sketched in chalk, not carved in stone. They dissolve the moment you shine reason on them. Seneca's remedy was not to deny fear, but to interrogate it. Ask, is this within my control? If yes, then take note of the action you'll commit to in daylight. If not, then why rehearse helplessness? Why perform the tragedy twice, once in your head and again when life unfolds? This is the essence of Stoic practice, to separate what is yours from what is not. Your choices are yours. The outcome is not. In the quiet of night, this division becomes a scalpel. With it, you cut away what doesn't belong to you. The weight lightens. Modern therapists echo this. Cognitive behavioral therapy, One of the most effective tools against anxiety is basically Stoicism dressed in modern clothes. The method: challenge the thought, expose its exaggeration, reframe its weight. Seneca, were he alive today, might have built insurance companies for ancient CBT. But here's where his approach was unique. He added perspective that reached beyond the self. He reminded his students, Lucilius among them, that death comes for everyone. And while that sounds grim, it was meant as liberation. Why waste the hours of night rehearsing fears when the final curtain is guaranteed? In his dry Roman way, Seneca might have shrugged. You're mortal. Why pretend you're not? It wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. By facing death, your smaller worries lose their costume. That meeting tomorrow? That bill? That awkward text you still haven't sent? Against the vastness of fate, they shrink to their true size. And let's not forget, Seneca himself was no serene monk. He was a senator, caught in the brutal politics of Nero's Rome. He advised an emperor known for paranoia, cruelty, and sudden rage. If anyone had reason to pace the floor at night, it was him. Yet he chose to treat philosophy as medicine, applying it daily, even desperately. There's an irony here worth savoring. Seneca grew wealthy, some say hypocritically, while preaching about simplicity. Historians still argue whether his advice was pure or compromised. But maybe that's exactly why his voice resonates now, because he was human, messy, and inconsistent, just like you. His remedies were not from a mountaintop sage untouched by the world, but from a man wrestling with his own chaos. So imagine this: you lying in bed, scrolling on your phone, heart racing with hypothetical disasters, and across time Seneca whispers, "Ask your fear, are you real or just imagined? Do you belong to me or not?" That's the medicine. Simple, repeatable, portable, a thought sharp enough to cut through the dark. Of course, philosophy isn't a pill you pop once. It's a practice, like brushing your teeth, like exercising, night after night, thought after thought, until the mind learns a new rhythm. You can't stop fear from knocking, but you can stop it from moving in. And maybe that's the deepest irony. The very hours that used to amplify your fear can become your training ground. The night is not a curse, but a classroom. Seneca hands you the syllabus: discipline, clarity, courage. The rest is homework only you can do. You don't live in ancient Rome. You don't wear a toga or light oil lamps before bed. Your world is buzzing phones, glowing screens, late-night emails, and the hum of traffic outside your window. Yet somehow your worries sound exactly like those of a Stoic philosopher 2,000 years ago. Different stage, same script. Think about how often your night spirals begin with a notification. A work message at 10 p.m. suddenly becomes a full mental courtroom trial, or a headline you read online convinces you the world is collapsing by morning. The technology is modern, but the trigger is ancient. Fear of the unknown, exaggerated in darkness. Seneca's words still fit. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Swap imagination with algorithm, and the meaning doesn't change. In fact, you might say the modern algorithm is built to feed your imagination with disaster. If Rome had its gossiping crowds in the forum, you have Twitter at midnight. Both can keep you awake for hours, so what do? You practice what Seneca prescribed. Use philosophy as medicine. Ask, is this in my control? Can you stop the stock market from dipping at 3 a.m.? No. Can you stop your boss from emailing you at night? Probably not. But can you stop opening the email? Can you set boundaries, both digital and mental? Yes. And that is where freedom lives. There's a reason Stoicism has found such fertile ground in the modern West, especially in America. It speaks directly to a culture of high pressure, constant comparison, and endless noise. When the outside world demands you hustle, grind, and outperform, Stoicism whispers a rebellion. Master yourself, not the world. And here's the twist: in America, where self-help books shout promises of success, Stoicism stands out by promising nothing except clarity. It doesn't say you'll get rich or you'll become powerful. It says you'll see clearly. You'll suffer less in imagination. You'll die, but until then you can live with reason. That honesty is rare, and in its rarity it feels like oxygen. Now let's be clear. Seneca himself didn't solve the puzzle perfectly. Historians debate whether he practiced what he preached, or whether he was trapped by wealth and politics. But maybe that's the most useful part. You don't need a flawless hero. You need a fellow struggler who leaves behind breadcrumbs. Seneca's words are exactly that. Not perfect, but enough to guide. So picture this. You, lying awake in the modern night, hear echoes of Roman footsteps. A man 2 millennia ago. Also sleepless, also rehearsing fears, finally choosing to put them on trial with reason. That connection, that lineage of restless humanity, is strangely comforting. You're not broken. You're human, and when you step back, the scale shifts. The problem that felt like a tidal wave shrinks into what it always was, a splash in the shallow end. Seneca's medicine works not by removing fear, but by reminding you of perspective. You don't need to win against the dark. You only need to see clearly within it. Which brings us back to where we began. Night, the amplifier of fears. Yes, it strips away distraction, but in doing so, it hands you the mirror. The very thing that once tormented you can be turned into practice. The night, once an enemy, becomes an ally, and that's where Stoicism offers its gift. It doesn't make the chaos vanish. It teaches you to stay still within it, to find calm in the noise, to discover that order isn't out there in the world, it's in here, in you. But let's stretch this further. Because the point isn't just to nod along with Seneca, it's to bring his medicine into your everyday American life. Take the workplace. You're told to always stay reachable, always on. But Stoicism reminds you availability is not the same as virtue. Seneca would likely tell you to guard your time as carefully as you guard your bank account. If a late-night email costs you 2 hours of sleep, the interest it charges on your peace of mind is brutal. You wouldn't hand cash to a thief. Why hand serenity to a glowing screen? Or look at relationships. A text left unanswered at night can feel like a storm in your chest. But Seneca's scalpel still applies. Is this under my control? You can't control the timing, the reply, or the silence. You can control your interpretation. Maybe the silence means nothing. Maybe it means everything. Either way, your spinning story doesn't change reality. Save the script writing for daylight. Even parenting ties in. Parents lie awake at night replaying fears about their kids, future schools, future jobs, future mistakes. Seneca would have smiled sadly and said, "You can't raise children into certainty. You can only raise them into strength. Worrying in the dark doesn't protect them. Modeling calm resilience does." Here's where modern neuroscience offers backup. Studies show that ruminating at night activates the same stress circuits as if the threat were real. The body doesn't know the difference between a burglar at your door and a deadline in your head. That's why Stoic training is vital. It teaches the mind to separate thought from fact, story from reality. Seneca didn't have fMRI machines, but he saw the truth in lived experience. Worry exhausts you twice, once in fear and once in life, and maybe most important for an American audience, the culture of productivity. You are told that sleepless nights mean you care enough, grind enough, want it badly enough. But the Stoics would laugh. What kind of achievement is it to arrive at success broken and restless? Better to sleep well and live long than to win a crown on a tired, trembling head. Seneca even warned against this obsession with busyness. He called it a form of laziness because it distracts you from the real work, governing your own soul. Swap the horse-drawn chariots for Uber rides and Slack channels and nothing has changed. People confuse motion with meaning. But you lying awake at 2 a.m. know the truth. Motion is not meaning. Clarity is, and clarity is what Stoicism delivers when practiced honestly. So you see, night isn't just an obstacle, it's a test ground, a rehearsal space. The world quiets down and suddenly you can practice separating what belongs to you from what doesn't. The fear that once pinned you becomes the very tool that frees you. You realize you can live not by chasing order in the outside world, but by creating order inside. And that's the real heart of Stoicism. Not an escape from life, but a deeper participation in it. You stay still within not because the chaos has vanished, but because you've stopped letting it drag you around. So when tomorrow comes, you'll rise lighter, not because the world is calmer, but because you are. That is Seneca's medicine. That is the practice. And that is how you transform a sleepless night into the most valuable classroom you'll ever have. The night has carried you through its labyrinth of echoes, and now the noise softens. Your breath, once shallow, finds a steadier rhythm. Thoughts once sharp now blur at the edges like ink fading in water. Seneca would tell you, don't demand silence from the world. Demand it from yourself, for the world has always been loud in Rome and in America, but inside you there is a quieter chamber waiting. You've touched it tonight. You remind yourself, most worries are shadows, stretched out by the dim light of the mind. By morning they return to their true shape, small, often laughable, rarely fatal. Even the problems that do last are never improved by rehearsing them at midnight. So you let them go. one by one, like setting stones down from a heavy pack. You are lighter now. The night is no longer enemy but companion. The bed is no longer a battlefield but sanctuary. There is calm wisdom here if you choose to notice. The kind that whispers you cannot predict tomorrow but you can prepare yourself for it. You cannot silence the world but you can quiet your mind. And you cannot guarantee how long you will live. But you can choose right now to live with reason, even in the dark. The lesson is not to erase fear, but to meet it with clarity, to see it, name it, and let it pass. And as you drift deeper into stillness, you carry that strength with you into tomorrow. Welcome back to Still Within, where calm endures in the midst of chaos. End of script. Stay still.